Okay, let's unpack this. We all see those really dense government documents, right? Especially executive orders. They're often packed with jargon, kind of makes your eyes glaze over sometimes. But here's the thing. These aren't just dusty papers filed away somewhere. They are direct, pretty powerful commands that can really reshape society, especially huge institutions like the U.S. military.
That's exactly right.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into one specific document, a recent executive order dated January 27, 2025. It's titled, Restoring America's Fighting Force. And just to be clear, this isn't like a suggestion or a proposal.
No.
It's a direct official directive straight from the president.
Yeah, absolutely. And our mission for you today is simple. We want to give you a clear, detailed breakdown of this executive order. We're going to pull out the most important pieces, help you understand exactly what the order says and what it directs.
Right.
And we really want to stress our goal here is just to present the information impartially. We're not taking sides, not endorsing any viewpoints. We're just here to convey the ideas that are actually in the source material.
Surely the content.
Purely the content. We'll use, common terms, everyday language to make it accessible, especially if you're trying to quickly get a handle on these big policy shifts without getting lost in all the legalese.
Absolutely. Makes sense. So let's get right into it. We can start with the executive order's stated purpose and its core policy right there in sections 1 and 2.
Sounds good.
Section 1, Restoring America's Fighting Force. It lays out the president's commitment as chief executive and commander-in-chief. What exactly does it commit to regarding the armed forces?
Okay, so it opens pretty strong. It establishes a clear commitment to, quote, meritocracy and the elimination of race-based and sex-based discrimination within the armed forces of the United States. And then it follows up, stating very explicitly, no individual or group within our armed forces should be preferred or disadvantaged on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, color, or creed.
Pretty direct.
Very direct. And what's kind of striking is how quickly it pivots from that principle to its main criticism. It alleges that in recent years, diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI programs and what the order calls their attendant race and sex preferences have been put into place within the armed forces.
And it doesn't just say they were implemented, right?
Yeah.
It makes some pretty significant claims about what those programs did.
Exactly. The order claims these actions undermine leadership, merit, and unit cohesion. And this is crucial that they are thereby eroding lethality and force readiness.
Wow. Lethality and readiness.
Yeah, so it's framing this not just as like an HR issue, but as a critical national security concern. That really changes the conversation.
That certainly does.
And it also asserts these programs violate Americans' consciences by engaging in invidious race and sex discrimination. So it's a direct critique, framing past approaches as harmful to the military's mission and potentially unconstitutional.
That's a very powerful framing. So, okay, building on that critique, what's the actual policy laid out in Section 2? What's the new operational principle?
Section 2 gives that core policy directive. It explicitly states that the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, specifically thinking about the Coast Guard here, and, quote, every element of the armed forces should operate free from any preference based on race or sex.
So free from preference based on race or sex.
Yeah.
That's the baseline.
That's the baseline. It's the overarching mandate for how things are supposed to function going forward, aiming for what the order presents as complete neutrality on those bases.
Okay. Now, delving into official documents like this, you always hit these specific definitions. They're critical, right? Because they define the scope.
Absolutely crucial.
So for this deep dive, we need to understand how this order defines its terms. Let's start with DEI office. How does Section 3A define that?
Right. Section 3A gives a really precise, quite detailed definition. It says a DEI office is basically any office, division, job, whatever unit that's set up for one of two main purposes.
Okay, what are they?
First, it's for influencing hiring or employment practices with respect to race, sex, color, or ethnicity, other than through the use of colorblind and sex-neutral hiring processes.
Got it. So influencing hiring unless it's colorblind and sex neutral.
Correct. And the second purpose is promoting differential treatment of or providing special benefits to individuals on the basis of race, sex, color, or ethnicity.
I see.
So this definition is really key because it tells you exactly which offices and activities are being targeted. It's not just about the name on the door, it's about what they do.
Right, function over form. That makes sense for understanding the reach. And it's not just DEI offices. This order, it's like you said, it points elsewhere for some key terms.
Yeah, like a scavenger hunt.
Exactly, like gender ideology and divisive concepts. They're central to the prohibitions later, but they aren't defined here. Can you explain that, Link?
Absolutely. And this is important. This order, Restoring America's Fighting Force, it doesn't actually define those terms itself.
Right.
Instead, it points back to definitions set up in other executive orders. So, gender ideology, that's defined in a separate EO from January 20, 2025, called Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism. Something, restoring biological truth. You get the idea.
Okay.
And divisive concepts, that definition comes from an even earlier EO, 13950, from back in September 2020, titled Combating Race and Sex Stereotyping.
Okay, so it's building on previous definitions.
Precisely. So for us today, the main point is that this order uses those terms by referencing those earlier definitions. We're not going to dive deep into the specifics of those definitions now, just focus on how this order incorporates them. It's using an existing legal vocabulary, so to speak.
That's a really crucial distinction for listeners. Okay, so with the terms clarified, the order moves fast. It goes right from defining the issue to commanding action.
Yep, no messing around.
And Section 4, this seems like where the practical changes really kick in. It mandates specific actions regarding DEI. What does it actually say?
This is where it gets very prescriptive, as you said.
Yeah.
Section 4 mandates, it uses the word shall, that the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall abolish every DEI office within their departments.
Every single one.
Every single one. And it adds any vestiges of these offices, which means it's not just offices with DEI in the name, but also any subunits, programs, initiatives, anything established to promote what the order calls a race-based preferences system.
Any vestiges.
Yeah.
That's strong wording. It sounds like more than just a simple reorganization.
Definitely. It implies a thorough dismantling, not just renaming things.
So what's the practical impact of a directive like that? On structures, on personnel? And crucially, what reason does the order give for this abolition?
Well, the impact is potentially huge. It's a major structural shift.
Right.
The order is explicit about why it says these offices are abolished, because they allegedly promote a race-based preferences system that subverts meritocracy, perpetuates unconstitutional discrimination, and promotes divisive concepts or gender ideology.
Okay.
So, practically, this means a top-to-bottom review of roles, budgets, ongoing programs that fall under that DEI umbrella. People might be reassigned, budgets reallocated, certain initiatives stopped entirely. It's not just getting rid of offices, it's doing so based on the premise that their function is fundamentally flawed according to the order's goals.
Right, and it doesn't stop at just abolishing offices. The order also requires this internal review. Section 5 tells the Secretary of Defense to conduct one. What's the focus of that review?
Yeah, Section 5 mandates an internal review specifically to document actions taken under DEI initiatives. It's not just a general look back, it's tasked specifically with finding and documenting all instances of race and sex discrimination and activities designed to promote a race or sex-based preferences system.
And there's a tight clock on that too, isn't there?
Yeah, very tight. The report has to land on the Secretary of Defense's desk within just 90 days of the order's date.
90 days. Wow.
That's incredibly fast for a review this comprehensive, especially in an organization the size of DoD. It definitely signals an intent for rapid action and accountability regarding those past initiatives.
And that speed seems to be a theme. Section 7 talks about the overall implementation timeline, right?
Yep.
It pushes for quick action across the board.
It really does. What's fascinating here is just how quickly these big changes are expected to happen and be reported on.
Yeah.
Both the Secretary of Defense and Homeland Security have to issue detailed guidance for implementation within just 30 days.
30 days for guidance.
Yep. And then, within 180 days, about 6 months, both secretaries have to submit a report documenting the progress their departments have made in implementing the order, plus any recommendations for what else needs doing.
Okay.
It really underscores the urgency. It's clearly meant to be decisive, measurable action, and fast.
So changing structures, demanding reviews, but the order goes further, right? It delves into the actual ideas and values being promoted within the military. Section 6, protecting American values. What does it say is prohibited? What can't be taught or advanced?
Right. Section 6A gets pretty specific about prohibitions. It lists several things. It calls un-American, divisive, discriminatory, radical, extremist, and irrational theories. Quite the list that are explicitly forbidden from being promoted, advanced, or inculcated.
And then what falls under that umbrella?
It includes divisive concepts, race or sex stereotyping, or race or sex scapegoating, all using those definitions from the earlier EO 13950 we talked about.
Okay, so those defined terms again. Does it name anything else specifically?
It does. It also specifically prohibits promoting the theory that America's founding documents are racist or sexist.
Right.
And like we mentioned, it bans promoting gender ideology, again, as defined in that separate EO. So it's a clear line in the sand about certain ideas and teachings that are deemed off limits for the military.
And the impact of Section 6 isn't just internal teaching, is it? What does subsection B add about hiring?
That's a key extension. Section 6B makes it clear that the prohibition isn't just for internal staff. It states DoD and the armed forces shall not hire employees, contractors, or consultants to teach the theories set forth in subsection A.
So blocking external pathways too.
Exactly. It ensures these prohibited theories aren't brought in through outside hires, reinforcing that comprehensive approach to controlling the narrative, so to speak.
And then it gets even more focused when we look at military education. Section 6C targets the service academies and other defense academic institutions. This part seems notable because it's not just about what not to teach.
Right. This is where the order becomes very proactive in shaping the curriculum. It mandates that the service academies, think West Point, Annapolis, and other defense academic institutions, must carefully review the leadership, curriculum, and instructors to make sure they align with this order.
Okay, a review for alignment.
But here's the crucial part. It doesn't just say what not to teach. It dictates what must be taught. These institutions, quote, shall be required to teach that America and its founding documents remain the most powerful force for good in human history.
Wow, required teaching.
Yes, that's a significant directive. It actively shapes how future officers are educated, how they view American history, and their place within it. It's an explicit mandate to instill a particular viewpoint.
That's quite specific. Okay, let's quickly cover the general provisions near the end. In Section 9. What do they say about how the order should be understood and implemented? Standard stuff, mostly.
Yeah, mostly standard legal language you see in EOs. Section 9A basically says the order doesn't override existing legal authorities of departments or OMB's budget functions.
Right.
And Section 9B says it has to be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. So, it operates within existing legal and budget realities.
Makes sense. But what about Section 9C? That's a common clause, but what's the significance here?
Right, Section 9C is that standard clause, but it's important for understanding the order's practical legal effect. It states the order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States. Meaning, while it's a powerful command within the executive branch telling departments what to do, it doesn't create a new legal basis for individuals to sue the government or its employees based on this order itself.
Okay, so it directs internal government action, but doesn't grant new lawsuit rights to outsiders based on its text.
Exactly. It's about setting internal policy.
Got it. So let's recap this deep dive then. This executive order, Restoring America's Fighting Force, from January 2025 is a really significant directive. Its stated aim is restoring meritocracy, eliminating race and sex discrimination in the military.
Right.
And it plans to do this by directing the dismantling of DEI initiatives, abolishing offices, related programs within DoD and the Coast Guard.
Yeah, that's a major part. And beyond that, it prohibits promoting or teaching certain ideas, things it labels divisive, or theories about the founding documents being racist or sexist or gender ideology. And at the same time, it mandates that military academies teach a specific positive view of America's founding.
Right.
So it really touches on recruitment, training, as the whole cultural environment within the military. It sets a very clear, different direction.
Absolutely. Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. Given these stated goals, meritocracy, eliminating discrimination, promoting specific values, and the specific actions mandated, like abolishing DEI and controlling curriculum, how might these changes actually play out in the day-to-day lives of service members? And thinking longer term, what impact could these shifts have on how the U.S. military is perceived, both internally and externally? And maybe even its effectiveness, just based purely on the objectives laid out right here in the document.
It's definitely something to think about how these top-down directives filter through and ultimately shape such a large and vital institution.
Food for thought.